the love above all else of the emigrant for the place of his birth and the friends he left behind there. For Danny Buckley, the place was Ballydesmond in northwest Cork, or King Williamstown as it was then known. Danny Buckley immortalised King Williamstown in the 180 words of a poem he wrote and then was cited to his relatives and friends shortly before the world's greatest maritime disaster. Danny was born in 1895 just outside King Williamstown, one of 7 children in a family struggling to make ends meet on a land still scarred by the famine. After schooling, he took up farm labouring, but with the sudden death of his father, he decided to leave for America and, hopefully, quickly make enough money to ease the plight of his distraught mother. With another young lad by the name of O'Connell, he managed to muster just enough cash for a steerage ticket on the White Star liner, the Titanic. The ship was said to symbolise man's conquest of the waves, 46,000 tons and with a double-plated hull divided into 16 watertight compartments. One man commented, "God himself could not sink this ship." Danny Buckley and his friend O'Connell joined the other 2,201 passengers at Cove, Queenstown it was then called. The night before, at the farewell party, Danny had recited his composition, Sweet King Williamstown.
My bonny bark bounced light and free across the surging foam, which bears me far from Innisfoil to seek a foreign home. A lonely exile, driven neath misfortune's coldest frown, from my loved home and cherished friends in dear King Williamstown. Whilst here upon the deck I stand, as I watch the fading shore, new thoughts arise within my mind, of friends I'll ne'er see more, of moonlight deeds and kindly hours, while fast the tears roll down, still thinking of the friends who dwell in dear King Williamstown.
On April the 14th, 5 days into her maiden voyage, the Titanic ground her side into a huge iceberg, tearing a gash 300 feet long. 1,500 people were to drown in the icy sea that night, including Danny Buckley's friend O'Connell. When the captain eventually gave the order to abandon ship, Danny went up on deck and helped women and children into the lifeboats. His work that night was later praised by many of the survivors and was recorded in one of the books written about the disaster. Only 711 people survived and were brought into New York, among them Danny Buckley, on board the Carpathia, which had sailed to the Titanic's assistance. Huddled among silent and shocked passengers, Danny wrote this brief note to be delivered many days later to his mother.
Our ship, the Titanic, struck an iceberg at 2:22 a.m. I then went on deck and met a sailor who asked me help lower the boats. He said, "Take a chance yourself." I did. The officers came along and ordered us off the boat. A woman in the boat said, "Lay down there, you're somebody's child." She put a rug over me and the boat went out. So I was saved.
The woman mentioned in that note was later identified as Lady Astor, whose husband John went down with the Titanic. Before the note arrived, a telegram from New York reached Danny's mother. It read simply, "Danny is saved." Danny Buckley stayed on in the United States, and when his adopted country entered the First World War, he joined the famous Irish regiment, the Fighting 69th. He survived many of the great battles of that terrible conflict, while companions around him were gunned down or were blown to pieces.
So I was saved. So I was saved. So I was saved.
Then, on the very last day of fighting,
Saved. Shall I no more gaze on the shore, or roam her mountains wide, or stray along black water's banks I trod when but a child, or watch the sun o'er Knocknabowl light up the heather brown, before it casts its farewell beams o'er sweet King Williamstown?
Before he left King Williamstown, those 6 years before, Danny had sung, "When the fields are white with daisies, I'll return." By a sad act of fate, he was true to his word. His body was exhumed and brought back for reburial, when the fields around his beloved King Williamstown were swaying white with daisies. A young man of just 23 years who had endured the horrors of the Titanic sinking and the war to end all wars, and who was yet cruelly cheated by hatred and death, even as the warlords were putting pen to paper to finally end the barbarity.
I know not yet, but I fondly hope, where'er my footsteps roam, still cherished greatly in my mind are the thoughts of love and home. Though fair as the shore as o'er my soul the night falls slowly down, may God be with you, motherland. Farewell, King Williamstown.